Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Greetings of the day, friends. I start with lecture 9. I was explaining to you about how to calculate whether the dumping has been practiced. That is the difference between export price and the price when the same goods are sold in the domestic market of the country from where the goods are exported. Now, there can be two situations while making the comparison. One is situation 1. I put it like this: situation where the goods sold in domestic market and also exported, that is the same goods. Second situation, that is situation 2, where goods are exported in foreign market but not sold in domestic market, or sold in domestic market but not the comparable quantity or very less quantity. In the first situation, where the goods that are also sold in the domestic market, the like goods, and then they are also exported. So, here the formula is simple. We try to find out the difference between export price and domestic market price. Here, in this case, we will not compare it with the domestic market price, but we will try to find out if the same goods that are exported in one of the country, whether they are also exported in another country, and what is the price in that third country where the goods are exported. Secondly, we would firstly like to know whether the third country where the same goods are also exported, whether that is the genuine price after finding out what is the actual cost of that, the price of the good, then what is the transportation cost, what is the tariff amount that is supposed to be paid, and after finding all these factors that have been applied, we will try to find the price of that very product in the third country and then make a comparison. So, that is another way, comparing it with the price of that product in the third country in a situation where the same products are not being sold in the domestic market, or if they are sold in the domestic market, the quantity or the volume is very less. So, that is one kind of challenge that sometimes has to be faced because of these situations. So, when there are no sales of the like product in the ordinary course of trade in the domestic market of the exporting country, or when because of the particular market situation or the low volume of sales in the domestic market of the exporting country, such sales do not permit a proper comparison. The margin of dumping shall be determined by comparison with the comparable price of the like product when exported to third country, appropriate third countries, and another country where the same goods are exported. And it is not only the question of appropriate third country, but whether the price that is being quoted there of that product is genuine or not, that has to be found out. or with the cost of production in the country of origin plus reasonable amount of administrative, selling and general cost and for profits. Now, in relation to this, there is another question, whether if the same product is not sold in even third country, then what will be the situation? Then we will not say that there is a practice of dumping, but we will say that export subsidy is being provided. All right. So, the matter will be taken under different agreement on agreement under the WTO, that will be covered under subsidies that are given for export promotion, and in such cases we will cover that under the prohibited category if there is a like product being affected, but otherwise we can also in certain situations cover it under actionable subsidy. So, subsidies and dumping in some respect they overlap each other, or if they do not overlap each other, we can find that there is a connecting link between subsidies and dumping. So, here you can understand that there has to be a like product being sold in the domestic market or the like product being exported in another third country, that can be meant for comparison if we wish to apply the regulations of on the dumping practices, but otherwise then we can switch over to the subsidies agreement. The margin of dumping shall be determined by comparison with the comparable price of the like product when exported to an appropriate third country, provided that this price is representative or with the cost of production in the country of origin plus a reasonable amount for administrative, selling and general costs and for profit. Now, the question is, what is margin of dumping, or sometime it is also termed as dumping margin. That is basically the export price minus the domestic price of the same good. Now, sometime instead of domestic market price, we also refer it as actual cost. Okay. That is, when we try to find what is it actual cost, then we add transportation cost and other cost, and we do not get the domestic price. In that situation, we draw the comparison like this. So, basically this is margin of dumping. Firstly, we write the export price, then minus domestic price of the same good. Now, how it should be valued? Since the dumping in case of the, or if we want to say that the dumping is being practiced or if that is being proven, then always in most of the cases the value should be negative when we try to calculate the margin of dumping. There is a case with regard to this European Community's anti-dumping duties on import of cotton type bed linen from India, and that was basically the question was here the zeroing method of calculating the dumping margin. Now, before going to the zeroing method, I will try to explain in numerical terms how we calculate the dumping margin or margin of dumping. Margin of dumping. Now, this is domestic market price of any product. Okay. This stands for, let us say, $10. There are several products here, 1, 2, 3. This is for $12 and this is for $15. These are the domestic market price. Export price of the product, here it is $9. In the second case, it is $13. In 15 in this case, sorry, in the third case it is, let us say, $15. All right. And then we have to calculate what is the dumping margin or margin of dumping. So, when we try how it is found, export price minus domestic market price. Okay, that is a very simple method. There are other calculation methods also applied, but the most simple method. Now, what will be the outcome here? We subtract 9 from 10 minus 1, here it is plus 1 and here it is 0. That is how we get the result. Now, in the first case where it is very clear that domestic market price is higher than the export price and we get the -1 here, this is the case of dumping being practiced for sure, all right, because export price is less. In the second case, export price is higher. So, here probably no dumping. In the second case, there are higher chances of dumping because we are getting the value 0, but then we do not know whether the transportation cost or the tariff has been added to this $15 or not, that is the export price, or how that is being compensated. So, after this can be another question mark, but here this is the clear case of dumping being practiced because we get -1 or a negative value after subtracting the export price with the domestic market price. So, this is how this is the most simple method to know whether dumping is being practiced or not. Now, in this case that is referred here, that was concerning the export of cotton bedsheet by India to European Union. Actually, India has been exporting various kinds of cotton bedsheet to European Union, and sometime there is a dumping calculation being done in certain categories, like if there is cotton bedsheet being exported from India, that can be of different range. So, let us put it like this: the cotton bedsheet of type A, B, C, D, all right. And in this case, it is not necessary that they will have always the domestic market price lower than the export price. So, in this case, what was the situation? India was exporting various types of or various kinds of cotton bedsheet to European Union, and among that, in one of these categories, like let us say these are the 4 types of cotton bedsheet being exported by India to European Union. In one of the type, that is like type B, they stated that the dumping is being practiced, and how they applied? They actually applied the zeroing method for calculating it. Now, what is basically the zeroing method? So, this was a very question of technicality, which probably it's a difficult to find out, but probably can be answered that dumping is being practiced, or probably can be answered that dumping is not being practiced. So, there is a wide gray area in such situation. How it is? Like let us say there in case of type A cotton bedsheet, type B cotton bedsheet, type C and type D cotton bedsheet, the domestic price is let us say $10 per bedsheet, and here it is $12 per bedsheet, $13 per bedsheet and $14 per bedsheet. Let us say that these are the prices being quoted, and they are all exported in one bulk, or sometime it could be India has made a contract with European Union to sell it for the year 2020, and in this case that will be sold in 4 different quarters. Like in the first quarter, partly bedsheet A, B, C and D will be sold, and in next quarter another part of the same category of the bedsheet will be sold. In third quarter another such remains of the A, B, C and D will be sold, and finally in the fourth quarter all whatever is left that will be sold. It could be like this. Basically, we have to connect these things, how they are interrelated with the contractual obligations also. So, it is not that when someone is claiming that dumping is being practiced by country A, that can be ascertained simply in one go. It is basically a contract that is being made between the parties, or let us say between the 2 countries, and then that contract is for certain duration of time, maybe for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and then within that time period several quarters are there, and when they try to find out in which quarter there has been a fluctuation in artificial fluctuation in price. So, similar was the case here that India was exporting cotton bedsheet to European Union of various kinds and in various quarters, and this was this is some kind of an assumed value that I am stating here for type A cotton bedsheet $10, type B cotton bedsheet 12, C $13 and D is $14. Now, here this is the domestic price of these bedsheet, and let us take the export price here. Now, export price for cotton bedsheet number A is $11, for cotton bedsheet B is $12, for cotton bedsheet C is $12, and cotton bedsheet D is again let us say it is $15, all right. and now we find out what is the dumping margin. This is like how we explain zeroing method. If we find out the dumping margin, that is export price minus the domestic value, the domestic price. So, the outcome here is plus 1, that is this is the export price and this is the domestic market price. So, here it is plus 1, here it is 0, and here it is again you see minus 1, here again it is plus 1, because $15 that is the export price and $14 is the domestic market price. Now, in the first case there definitely is no dumping, in second case we do not have any value, that is 0. So, it is like 50-50 situation, it can be a dumped product, the type B bedsheet can be a dumped product, type B bedsheet cannot be a dumped product. C seems to be having the negative value. So, here we can say probably is this point where we can say that there is a possibility of dumping, because export price is lower than the domestic price of the same product. Here in D we again get the positive value. So, there is no dumping being practiced. Now, what European Union was doing and what was the India's claim, that while calculating this dumping margin based on the contract, all the values should be taken together. That means, this plus 1, 0, minus 1 and plus 1 should be taken all together, and the outcome will be like this, plus 1 will cancel this minus 1. So, final outcome is plus 1. There is no dumping if we go by this method. That means, we aggregate by whatever numerical value we have obtained after this calculation of all different bed sheets. So, then there is no dumping. But what European Union was doing here, European Union was taking the positive values as this as 0, like if this is plus 1 and that means no dumping, then instead of taking this value as plus 1, it was taking this as 0, then this 0 remains 0, then again there is a minus 1. So, this minus 1 was not added in this altogether like numerical values, but it was isolated, that this is a case of dumping, and this again plus 1 was, instead of considering this as a positive value, that means no dumping, this was again termed as 0, that means there is no dumping. So, this is known as zeroing method. And finally, it was said that India in this case, when it has sold or given this cotton bed sheet of C type, there they have dumped this product. That was the allegations of the European Union, and based on this they were imposing tariffs, or sometime we can say that there is a hike in duty by the European Union, and this was challenged by India in this case. Now, you see here, in certain cases, like I have said, this situation becomes very complex, because this can be a case of targeted dumping, and sometimes this cannot be a case of any such dumping. How it can be a case of targeted dumping, that out of all the goods that has been promised to be sold or to be exported, there instead of dumping all those goods that are being promised, or all the variety of same good, there can be one type of good, but of different categories or of different varieties. Within that, there can be some part of it which is dumped. So, that is termed as targeted dumping. That is one possibility, but then there can be that it is not actually dumped, but for some reasons the price of this, in this case like C bed sheet, that has fluctuated in the domestic market. All right, it is not a case of being dumping, but it is the price has fluctuated. So, we may not take into consideration that part, or for that purpose we take all in together where the goods have not been dumped, like the positive values as is shown in the table, and then it could be that mere a chance that they have got the negative value while calculating, because the price of the goods meant for export, they got reduced, maybe because of the market fluctuation at that point of time in the country. Let us say if there is a good cotton harvest at the later quarter, like if we divide 1 year, then it could be that in first quarter there is not proper cotton harvest, or they have to purchase the cotton at a higher price, those who are manufacturing bed sheet. but in the next quarter it has gone down, it has depreciated. So, at that time they have purchased the cotton at bulk, and because they knew that they have to export it. So, the export price automatically will get reduced. So, there can be other reasons also. Now, European Union was not considering the other reasons, but it simply zeroed the value and stated that India is dumping this kind of bed sheet. So, there the matter went to the dispute settlement body of the European Union and dispute settlement body of the WTO, and there it stated that the method applied by the European community for calculating whether the cotton bed sheets from India being exported to the European community are being dumped is wrong. So, zeroing method is not the right method of calculation, because at many point of time it can be arbitrary and it does not take into consideration other factors that fluctuates the price when there is a domestic comparison between the domestic market price and the price of the product based on which it is exported. So, that was how this case got significance. What should be the exact method of calculating the dumping margin between the goods that are being exported and their domestic price. Dumping affects market position in a situation. Now, when this can be practiced successfully, that is another question. So, keep this in mind, one thing, that after the principle of free trade had been severely advocated, the multinationals probably they are looking for the opportunities that in which country they find the vulnerable market and where they can set this price of their own in order to have the long term effect. So, firstly we need to understand what kind of, as an economist, and as I said that WTO is nowadays regulating body for these trade issues. So, they have to understand that in what situation these multinationals they can be realizing those opportunities. So, when the home and foreign markets are separated by domestic tariff protection, and there is a very little knowledge to the foreign buyers of the actual price of the product in the producers market. So, when there is a difference in the tariff rates, the domestic tariff protection, like since the practice of dumping means we are drawing a comparison between the like products that are being sold in the domestic market of that country and the like goods that are being exported, the comparison has to be drawn. And also when the similar goods are produced in that very country also. So, if the country which is importing the foreign product, okay, that imposes the tariff or there exists a tariff, then naturally the goods that are being sold in that country they will be expensive. So, in order to maintain a fair balance between the imported goods and the goods that are manufactured in the domestic market, there should be less of the tariff, because basically in order to avoid these tariff rates the price is artificially reduced, price for the export is artificially reduced. Second is the situation that the foreign buyers, basically it is the keenness of the foreign buyers or how they get allured to the foreign products that sets the demand for the foreign products, and definitely the price finally that is settled. Sometimes that demand is artificially created by lowering the price of the foreign goods. Now, here the thing is that the foreign buyers they must be knowing this thing, that what is the actual cost of this product in the home country from where these goods are being coming. If they are well educated or mainly I would say here that if they are well informed about the actual price, then they will be reluctant to buy in case they realize the challenges that they will face at a later stage. So, here when the home and foreign markets are separated by domestic tariff protection, domestic tariff protection must be seen from the two perspectives. One is that the goods that are being sold to the foreign market it has imposed, it has a high tariff. Okay. So, in order to compensate that tariff, the export price is artificially reduced, that is one thing. Second is that the country which is exporting the product, it also has high domestic tariff, that means or it does not allow foreign investors or it does not allow the foreign manufacturers in its own country. So, what is the result? That the country which is exporting the product or the manufacturer from that country which is exporting the product to another country has a monopoly like situation. I explain this, like we are assuming that this is country A exporting goods to country B, and there are charges that the goods from this country A are being dumped to this country B. Now, how this dumping can be successful? One is that here the manufacturer, let us say T is the manufacturer from A, it is able to sell the good at a lesser price. How it is able to sell the lesser price? Because of the domestic tariffs in this country, there are no foreign competitors. Here in this country for this T. All right, like if we say that, take the example of India, if Tata is the only manufacturer of cars, let us assume so, or Maruti companies, Maruti Suzuki is the only manufacturer of the car, and they are exporting the cars at a cheaper price than what they are selling in India, or Tata is exporting the cars at a cheaper price than what in comparison to what they are selling in India. Now, the first question is how they are able to manage it. Either the government is giving kind of subsidy, or if the government is not giving subsidy, that means they are not facing competition in India, or they are not facing competition in the home market. So, here what they can do, they can dictate the whatever price they want. So, whatever loss they suffer in the foreign market because of artificial reduction in price, that will be compensated by hike in price in their domestic market. So, but what leads to this position? Because there is a strong tariff barrier being imposed by this country, by India, which is not allowing the foreign car manufacturers to enter and compete with the Tata company. So, Tata company, this is an example, a hypothetical example. So, Tata company can quote whatever price it likes to the domestic consumers, and whatever profit it earns is meant for compensating the losses it is suffering in the foreign market. So, this is what it means here. And second is that the consumers of the foreign country, they are not very well aware what is the actual price and what will be the effect of this artificial lowering of the price. As there are no uniform set of rules on competition policies among the member states, and many of the member states have not adopted such trade guidelines, so it is possible that there exists less competition in the home market than the foreign market. The lack of free competition in the domestic market can also be because of the protectionist policy of the member state. The second reason is interrelated with the first reason, that there, as stated to you even earlier, that we lack the uniform competition policy, but then we have no choice either. Reason being, because a uniform competition system or a uniform principles of competition for a global market can only be extended or can only be created if the economic differences among the countries or the market situation of the countries of the different member state, or if not all the member state, but then the majority of the member state is quite closer to each other or is very nearly closer to each other. But here there is a wide array of differences, therefore, we cannot have a uniform competition policy. So, some features remain in the what will be the effect of it if there is no uniform competition? That some features of the market policy will remain in the protectionist zone, and some of them will get the free rein to compete with the foreign factors of production, or let us say the foreign economic dimensions of production. So, that will remain. For example, let us say if there is the developing country, one of the developing country, and it has to import ores, iron ore from another country, but it has taken some kind of lead in manufacturing cars. So, what will be the effect? That it, of course, it is able to manufacture the car and it can export the car, but so far as the iron ore is concerned, it will try to look from where it can get at a cheaper price without realizing whether that is the most fair price of the iron it is ready to pay, or the countries from where it is buying that iron ore, whether they are quoting the fair price or they have artificially reduced the price. So, that consideration will be not its priority. of course, what will be its priority, that how much car it can export to another country, that becomes the priority. So, that is what it means here, that in situation where we do not have the possibilities of fair competition because of the different factors of production. Likewise, another such situation is the labor market, that is another such example. The developed countries, they have very strong labor laws, they have very strong notion of the rights, concept of rights, and also the industrial laws. Now, they cannot, and also they have a very strong social security system. So, the laborers in that country, they definitely ask for higher wages, the wage rate should be very high, plus they claim social security benefits as well. That means, one of the factors in that country is not facing competition. I mean, the foreign market has kept its labor wages very high. Why it is very high? Because they are not facing competition with the laborers from other countries. Those countries, they do not give so easy visa to the workers, unskilled workers, or sometime even to the skilled workers. So, as a consequence of it, that remains uncompetitive, and therefore, they have to shift their manufacturing unit to the countries where the labor price is low. That means, labor price is very competitive. Now, why in the developing countries this factor is very competitive, or labor factor is competitive? Because the population is very high. There is less skilled workers, so, and plenty of unskilled workers. So, they are happy with whatever wages they are provided. So, that helps the manufacturer to bargain, and we cannot put all that in a very fair competition manner. We, of course, we use a general term that this country is efficient in the labor sector, this country is efficient in the technological sector, and some other sectors, maybe in infrastructure sector. So, these different factors we try to put in we try to give different merits, but altogether there cannot be a general principle to guide what should be the true competitive market. So, as there are no uniform set of rules on competition policies among member states, and many of the member states have not adopted such trade guidelines. So, it is possible that there exists less competition in home market than the foreign market. The lack of free competition in domestic market can also be because of the protectionist policies of that member state. Sometimes it can be because of the protectionist policy, which politically is termed as the nationalistic policy, that buy from your own homegrown country, or you should think of the upliftment of your own country, or you should try to make your country superpower. So, of course, these sounds very nice, but when we say that what is the merits, whether we should respect the merit and quality, or we should go by the nationalistic tendencies, there, of course, there sometimes even nationalistic tendencies are good, or they are also required, because if the country's economy gets weakened, if we allow too much of the foreign participation or foreign, let us say, involvement in our production sector, then there are definitely chances. Of course, we should keep on learning and try to develop our own skill to make ourselves more competitive, but then there is side effects also, that the foreign companies may start taking advantages of our weaknesses if we do not compete them in the right time. So, that has to be, there has to be a fair balance. Neither we can say there should be purely nationalistic tendencies, because purely nationalistic tendencies at the end of the day makes us sluggish. We are not ready to learn new skills, we are not ready to face competition, and then the political parties, they try to exploit only that is how they do. Thirdly, there is a high possibility of exporting at a cheaper price when government favors directly or indirectly the export industries by favorable economic policies, for example, by providing soft loans or subsidies, etc. So, that such industries can compete in international market. Now, realize that we are talking about when is dumping practice successful. So, one reason is because when a country is dumping, that means country is exporting a product at a cheaper price. At a cheaper price sometime can mean cheaper price is in general lesser than the domestic market price. Sometime that can be even lower than the actual cost price. So, if the actual cost of manufacturing a good is $10, so it can be that it is exported simply at $10, or it is exported even at $9, because of the manufacturer or the country wants to outreach or wants to capture the market in the long run. but how it will bear the loss. Of course, when I say this, it seems totally unreasonable that why a company should sell its product in a foreign market at a lesser price. But then there are chances that the same company is getting benefited out of subsidies or other such support by its home government. And how is that? Like, it can be that there is a direct financial benefit, like I quoted the example, there are tax waivers in that home country. If country A is exporting its product to country B at a lesser price or at a price lesser than the domestic market price, and it succeeds in increasing export. So, how it will be compensated? That loss will be compensated. The government of that country will waive off all the tax burdens, or it can reduce the tax burden, or it can allow the loan being provided to that country at a lesser interest rate in comparison to the market rate, or long term loans can be given where they can return it in longer period of time, or they can return it at their own wishes. So, these kind of other methods can be adopted, not subsidies being given in a direct form like the direct financial contribution, but indirect form. Now, correlate this with the features that we discussed in the last few of the lectures, how we determine subsidy, that is a form of financial contribution directly or indirectly. So, here these are the indirect form of financial contribution being provided. Now, that is meant intentionally to compete in the international market. That kind of support is being provided to compete in the international market. This procedural issue was discussed in the case of United States Continued Dumping and Subsidy Offset Act of 2000. Now, here there is a very such crucial thing happened in United States, because it enacted a law that was termed as Byrd Amendment. Byrd Amendment. Now, what it was doing, as per this law, this was a very tricky law. US companies, they started making allegations against the foreign companies that they are dumping their products to United States. All right. So, what they do, that US companies, they initiated or they started making those claims that these foreign companies, they have started dumping their product in the US market. Now, bear in mind that if country make these allegation and later on if it is found that the dumping has been practiced by another country, in order to get the remedy, what it can do, it can impose heavy tariffs on that goods from that very country. Now, in this case, since the US companies started making this allegation, so they wanted that those companies from different countries, they should make a deal with the US companies that they will enter into a partnership, or they will give chance to the US companies to collaborate with them and then sell the goods in the United States. Otherwise, they will have to face the dumping practices. That means, then they will be able to sell the goods in the United States at a higher prices, and how that will be how the prices will be hiked by imposing extra tariff on the goods that are coming through that companies. So, that was the kind of practice these US companies adopted. This was as per through this law, because the US law was that if the companies, the US companies, they are bringing such cases, firstly they will be able to negotiate with those companies, and secondly they will be given tax exemptions also in the United States. If those cases are successful, then they can get tax exemption, like if a US company brings a case of dumping against a foreign company. Firstly, they can get the chance to collaborate with that company, and secondly they can get tax exemption also in their home country. So, that was what it meant by the Byrd Amendment. So, now this was a kind, that means it was a kind of subsidies being provided in order to enhance the sale of the US goods in comparison to the foreign goods, or it was in a case of bounty being given. I would use the term here as a reward being given to the US companies, those who are bringing the suit against the foreign companies, and many a times those suit were artificial suits or the suits that in true sense were not based on dumping being practiced, but that was in order to blackmail those companies that they are making these malpractices and we have to bring the law into force. So, it was like that. Dispute between the parties arose concerning Continued Dumping and Subsidies Offset Act of 2000, in brackets the Continued Dumping and Subsidies Offset Act, also known as Byrd Amendment. The Byrd Amendment, formally known as Continued Dumping and Subsidies Offset Act, was enacted by US in October 2000. According to the act, the proceeds from anti-dumping and countervailing duties were to be awarded to US companies that bring the dumping cases. So, that was the way that either those foreign companies, they must collaborate with the US companies, and if they do not collaborate with the US companies or they do not share certain profit with the US companies after signing an agreement, then they will have to pay the penalty for stating that the goods they are selling to US are dumped, and if they succeed in these dumping cases, the US companies, if they succeed, then they will be given some kind of reward by the under this law. So, that was like a subsidy being or bounty being provided to the US companies. According to that, the proceeds from anti-dumping and countervailing duties were to be awarded to US companies that bring the dumping cases. So, the matter finally was referred to the appellate body that this is the kind of law enacted by US. Now, this was intentionally done in order to create a protectionist scenario in the US system, that the foreign companies, they should not be very much welcomed in the US system, and the US companies, they must hold their monopoly. So, that was the intention. The appellate body made it clear that Article 6 of the GATT 1994 and anti-dumping agreement identified 3 responses to dumping, namely definitive anti-dumping duties, provisional measures and price undertaking, and no other response is envisaged in the text of Article 6 of the GATT 1994 or in the text of anti-dumping agreement. Appellate body further added that similar reasoning should apply to subsidization. So, appellate body actually stated that US should discard this act, it is definitely unfair. Reason being because the grounds on which the dumping action against dumping can be taken, they are very clearly elaborated. And then after finding the fact, now what are the grounds? That there has to be a proper calculation of dumping margin. That means, there should be clear indication that export price of the product is lower than its domestic market price, and that should be fairly calculated, okay, not the way it was calculated in the zeroing method. And after this fair calculation, then the exact amount of price difference that should be referred in the anti-dumping duties, or sometime the provisional measures can be taken. The provisional measures means you give time to those companies, to the foreign companies, that within this period of time you try to rectify the price you have quoted, or if you do not rectify the price, or if you do not quote the original price of this product, then we can impose the anti-dumping duties. So, actually it has to be based on certain procedure, and that procedure is clearly defined and categorized in the anti-dumping agreement itself. So, one has to follow this, not readily that stating if they do not make any deal with the companies, or if they putting an allegation that the foreign companies, they have introduced their product in a dump manner in the United States, and if they succeeded, then out of the anti-dumping duties that are imposed to the foreign companies, part of it is given to them as a reward or as a subsidy to them. So, that kind of practice was not referred in the dumping agreement or Article 6 as is quoted in the GATT. It is something, an addition that United States lawmaker has added in order to create the protectionist method, or in order to show some kind of inward looking approach towards their market system. So, that was heavily criticized in the WTO system itself. It identified 3 responses to dumping, namely definitive anti-dumping duties, provisional measures and price undertaking, and no other response is envisaged in the text of Article 6 of GATT 1994 or in the text of anti-dumping agreement. Appellate body further added that similar reasoning should apply to subsidization. So, In case of subsidization also the same should be applied, that we cannot simply make an allegation that this country is using subsidies meant for export purposes, but firstly it has to be shown that what kind of factors are involved for giving those subsidies and what are its consequences, what are its effect. The effects are there is a decrease in the volume of sale of like product, or there is nullification or impairment of the benefit to the product in a country where the foreign goods are imported. So, in that sense there has to be a fair comparison being drawn. That was what the appellate body has analyzed here. Based on the facts, it seems that statute enacted by the US is more inward and protectionist in effect in assessing the relevance of US enactment from the WTO perspective. The appellate body has tried to give interpretations based on the objectives of the free movement of goods and justifiable regulatory measures adopted. Now, it gave a wide interpretation here. It not only took into consideration or not only criticized what was actually the Bayard Amendment, but Bayard Amendment has to be seen in the light of the approach with which the WTO promises to the member states or all the parties of the WTO, that is to liberate their market system or to initiate the system allowing the goods from other part of the world to be introduced in their market openly. Now, openly here means not simply reducing the tariffs, but also not to create unnecessary regulations that are in a way hurdle to the foreign products. So, in that way it quoted that it is more of an inward and protectionist in effect. Protectionist in the effect means the tendency that existed prior to the formation of the WTO to protect their home industry or the domestic industry. So, that kind of legislation goes contrary to the objectives of the WTO or the new objectives that are set to be achieved by means of adopting the free trade measures. So, in that way they heavily criticized it in the light of the new objectives that are introduced in the WTO trading system. Then comes the another point, that is what are the types of dumping. So, we have discussed by now what do we mean by the term dumping, what is the method of calculating the dumping margin, and then the heavily criticized two things, that is the zeroing method and then the Bayard Amendment that was in a way pro US approach in order to put check on the foreign goods being introduced in the US system. Then is the types of dumping. Dumping is also categorized in various types. One is the sporadic dumping. Now, what is sporadic dumping? Sporadic dumping is viewed as relatively less harmful since it is of temporary nature. Comparing it with the or connecting it with the definition of dumping, that the goods are introduced in a foreign country at a price lesser than the export price. So, that can be for a long duration, that can be for a short duration, and sometimes that can be unintentional. So, sporadic is something that is almost like unintentional or for a shorter period of time, that can be in a situation, since it is of temporary nature, in such like practices can be termed as sporadic. This practice is for short duration and without deliberate intention to affect international trade pairs. The idea is not to bring loss to the or to put the like products of the foreign country or the manufacturers of the like product in a foreign country at loss, or they should be injured, but simply the goods are being exported in a foreign market at a lesser price in comparison to the domestic market price. Then what can be those situations? Those situations can be like if the goods are produced in bulk and they are not like required in the, or there is less of the demand of those goods in the domestic market. For example, let us say for some reason this time there was a bumper cotton harvest in a country and the cloth manufacturing industry purchased that cotton, realizing that it is available at a cheaper price, and they manufactured not many cotton goods, but now there is a slump in the market, there is no demand of those goods in the market. So, instead of getting those goods wasted, getting those cotton products being wasted, what is the remedy or what can be the alternative? To sell them in a foreign market even at a cheaper price. So, at least to get something out of I mean it is better than nothing, something to get something is always better than to get nothing. So, that kind of practice, and it will not be a regular phenomena, or it will not be something that will last for long, but it was for this season that it has happened, or it could be for maybe just a short time period that the goods are being introduced in a foreign market at a lesser price. So, that is what we mean here. Now, this is one example. The other is sometimes the drugs are tested, okay, like a pharmaceutical company, they want to test a drug, whether that is what will be its effect on human beings. So, they want sometimes they want people from different ethnicity, because of different weather conditions, different living conditions of the country, what will be the effect, to know the effect of that drug. They will also do the testing in their domestic market, but they want the results also from other countries. Now, since this is the drug for testing, they will sell it or introduce it in the foreign market at a lesser price. So, that can also be considered a part of the sporadic dumping, where the goods are introduced, the pharmaceutical goods are introduced in a foreign market. In comparison to the domestic market, the price is less, but the intention is not to harm that industry or harm a foreign industry. So, that is what we term here or categorize as sporadic dumping. Next is exporting firm could not decide how much to produce or was unaware. Sometimes the production is high, they could not assess what will be the exact demand. Let us say there is a new company that has entered into a market, and they could not assess whether the product they are going to launch will be successful or not, but they have produced it in abundance. So, whatever that is remained, they want that it should not be wasted, they are ready to export it at a lesser price. So, that in that way also we consider this or categorize it in terms of sporadic dumping. So, exporting firm could not decide how much to produce or was unaware of the demand conditions beforehand or the fluctuations in exchange rate. Sometime it could be the price has fluctuated, suddenly for certain reasons the price has gone down, or the market conditions have gone depressed, there is a depression in the market, and when they were manufacturing the goods, the market was high, all right. So, suddenly there is a depression. Now, in what they can do in those situations, they definitely would prefer to export it. So, that kind of situation is also covered under the categories of sporadic dumping. There can also be situations where product in the large quantities are facing a slump period in home business conditions. So, as an alternative, the products are exported at a lesser price, that we have already discussed here. Then thirdly, there can be possibilities where a firm that is newly established or already existing experiences a trading environment that is usually uncertain. So, something has happened. Let us take the example of COVID situation, where many things were produced, but they could not be sold. So, and they are available, they are stocked in their warehouses, or wherever they wish to store, they have been stored. Now, when the manufacturer wants to use that product or wants to sell that product, it will not be able to sell it at the exact price. Now, the price has to be depreciated. So, that is like anything uncertain has happened that was not expected. There can be possibilities where the firm that is newly established or already existing experiences a trading environment that is usually uncertain, that kind of thing, then the only way out is to sell it at a lesser price and even to export the product at a lesser price. Next category is targeted dumping. Targeted dumping is something similar to what we say as in the example that I have quoted in EC bed linen case. Now, there can be that when the goods are exported to another country, there are of various categories and they are exported in various quarters. So, it could be that not all the quarters, the goods that are exported, not in all the quarters the price, there is a price difference or there is a price discrimination, but it could be in some quarters there is a price discrimination, or it could be within those quarters there is some quality of the goods or some category of the goods where there is a price discrimination. Take the example here about the targeted dumping. Now, country A exports to country B. And it has signed the contract to sell, let us say, any kind of product, and that has to be sent, transported or transshipped in 1 year time, and we divide this 1 year in 3 quarters, or let us take 4 quarters. All right. Now, in this 4 quarters, then there are various types. That product has various types. Product A, or product A already is quoted here. Product X has various types. All right, X1, X2, X3, X4. All right, these are the types. Now, in this case, the similar product is also being produced by country B. Also produces similar product. Okay, let us take the example that if country A is exporting to country B any, let us say, any kind of clothes, men's garment. All right. So, men's garment are being manufactured by country A also, by country B also, cotton garments. And then, but since they are manufactured in abundance and of good quality by country A, so the country B has signed a contract that country A can import this to, or sorry, country A can export this to country B. Therefore, that has to be transshipped in 4 quarters and in various qualities X1, X2, X3 and X4. Now, since country B also grows cotton, but the cotton that is grown by country B is of superior quality, so but less in quantity. So, let us say that X1, X2 that they are the clothes manufactured of superior quality, and X3, X4 they are of inferior quality. Now, country A grows cotton in abundance, but that is of inferior quality, mainly of inferior quality and less of the superior quality. So, here it faces main competition with X3 and X4, that is the cotton goods that are manufactured of inferior quality by country B, and the same is also exported by country A. So, they will not dump the products X1 and X2, that is the cotton goods manufactured of the superior quality cotton, but they may dump this product of that is manufactured of inferior quality cotton, because that is facing the competition with X3 and X4, that is the goods, cotton goods that are manufactured of inferior quality cotton that is produced in country B. So, that is the targeted dumping, that you do not target the entire product from that is available in the foreign country, but part of it or some segment of it is targeted, because you can, that is where you face the competition, or that is where the foreign producer of the product faces the competition. That is why we use it as a targeted dumping, that you focused it's a particular product or some particular aspect of that product. Targeted dumping is another form of dumping, but is not very common in terms of cross border trade practices, as the term target suggests. There is indeed some hidden objectives in this type of business strategy. The concept of targeted dumping is that a company might not be able to apply a dumping strategy towards whole of the market, but refer to a narrow section or a targeted group of people. It is somewhat like if Maruti company sees that it does not faces its competition with, there is no competition with high end cars, because Maruti company does not manufactures high end cars, but up till the middle range car it is facing competition. So, it can artificially reduce the price of those middle range cars because to sustain in the market or to maintain its demand in the market. So, it is something like a strategy being played in a situation where there is a variety of products being available of different categories of different qualities, and out of that the intention of the foreign exporter is to target where it finds that there exists the competition. So, this is what we consider as targeted dumping. Thank you for giving attention to this lecture, and I will continue further in next lecture series. Thank you very much.